Jake, after 17 years of working with us, we had decided we're eliminating your position. My boss said flatly, clear out your desk by the end of the day. My name's Jake Wilson. I'm 54 years old, and up until that Monday morning, I was a senior systems analyst at Meridian Technologies in Columbus, Ohio. For nearly 2 decades, I've been the backbone of the IT department. Through dial-up connections, hardware overhauls, and the full shift to cloud infrastructure, I'd outlasted 3 CEOs, trained every new tech hire, recovered countless lost files, and worked weekends and holidays without ever asking for a raise or recognition. So when Daniel called me into his office, with Vanessa from HR already seated, I knew exactly what was coming. The atmosphere had shifted weeks ago. I understand, I said, giving a single nod. I walked out without another word. No anger, no bargaining, just quiet acceptance. Back at my desk, I noticed younger employees glancing over, then quickly shifting their eyes back to their monitors. News travels fast. Most of them were coders I had trained myself. Good people. But they didn't really understand what lived beneath the surface of our systems or how the legacy framework held everything together. None of them knew how to access the custom tools I'd built, with the admin credentials hidden 3 layers deep. I began packing my things slowly and methodically. A framed family photo, the coffee mug my son made back in high school, a small cactus that somehow stayed alive for 17 years under office lights. Bethany from marketing stopped by, her face tight with disbelief. Jake, I just heard. This is insane. You practically built this place. I gave a small shrug. Companies change direction, but without warning, after everything you've done. Her voice rose, catching others' attention. It's okay, I said softly. But it wasn't okay. Not really. Still, I wasn't about to make a scene. As I made my way out, Daniel stood in his doorway, silently watching. No farewell, no handshake, just making sure I was actually leaving. What no one in that building had ever truly noticed was that I had become the most vital person there, not because I was extraordinary, but because I was meticulous. I had documented everything. Years ago, I'd set up secure audit protocols at the request of the legal team during a prior scandal, designed specifically to monitor unauthorized access. I also kept my own copies. Sitting in my car, I paused for a moment, staring at the 12-story building where I'd spent most of my adult life. The security badge I just turned in had been renewed 16 times. I started the engine and headed home. They had no idea what was coming on Wednesday. I'd been with Meridian since the days it occupied just 2 floors in a business park. I started when my daughter Olivia was in kindergarten. Now she was wrapping up grad school. The company expanded, and I grew with it. I'd turned down better offers from other firms because loyalty still meant something to me. Andrea, my wife, used to joke that the servers were like my second family. She wasn't wrong. I knew every system inside and out, every workaround, every backdoor patch for problems the execs didn't even know existed. The infrastructure I built had weathered 3 acquisitions and a string of innovations that upper management eagerly adopted, only to abandon a few months later. Daniel took over as my boss 5 years ago. Young MBA type. He referred to our department as IT resources instead of people. He came in full of ideas about efficiency, streamlining, and digital transformation, buzzwords that usually meant squeezing more from fewer people. At first, I tried to help him grasp how deep and layered our systems were, shaped by years of growth and constant change. But in meetings, he'd say, "We need to future-proof," while looking right through me. 6 months ago, he brought in a consultant, Jason Phillips. Expensive suit, firm handshake, Stanford degree proudly showcased on his LinkedIn. The 2 of them were often holed up in conference rooms, lowering their voices whenever I walked past. 3 months ago, I noticed my admin permissions quietly changing. Nothing obvious, just slight tweaks to access control. I could have raised concerns, but instead, I watched and took notes. "You've been quiet lately," Andrea said one evening as we sat out on the porch. "Everything okay at work?" I nodded, sipping my beer. Just some changes. Nothing new, but this time, the changes felt different. I was being left out of meetings. Project updates and upgrade emails stopped landing in my inbox. Tasks I normally handled were being reassigned to younger team members. Then I found it, a company-wide memo outlining modernization efforts that I'd never seen before. It detailed a complete restructuring of the IT department under Jason Phillips' leadership. My position wasn't even listed on the new org chart. And that same day, while running a routine security scan, one of those background tasks no one paid attention to anymore, I spotted something strange. Unusual activity patterns in our financial software. Regular payments were being made to a vendor I didn't recognize, Apex Solutions Group. A quick lookup showed it had only been registered the previous year, and the listed business address turned out to be a UPS store. The transfers had started small, but had grown steadily each month. I didn't raise any alarms. Just kept tracking it quietly, documenting every detail. Sometimes it's the quiet guy in the corner who sees everything, precisely because no one thinks he's watching. The morning after I was let go, I sat in my home office, staring at my personal laptop. No alarm clock, no commute, just silence, and the weight of it all settling in. Andrea brought me a cup of coffee and set it down next to me without saying a word. After 19 years of marriage, she could read me better than anyone. "I'm heading to the store," she finally said. "Need anything?" I shook my head. Once she left, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a flash drive, one of several I kept locked away. Company policy was clear. No data was to leave the premises. But years ago, when legal asked for an audit protocol to monitor insider threats, I told them I'd need secure off-site backups. They agreed, signed off on it, and promptly forgot. I plugged in the drive and started combing through the files. Internal emails, meeting notes I shouldn't have had access to, financial records regular employees wouldn't even know existed. And there it was, a complete trail of payments to Apex Solutions Group. Almost $1.8 million over 18 months. The approval chain led straight to our CFO, Brian Wilcox. I kept digging, cross-referencing timelines and transaction amounts until the pattern became clear. Each payment aligned with software license renewals for tools we use company-wide. But the amounts were inflated, sometimes by 15%, other times by 20%. Just enough to avoid red flags, but enough to add up quickly. I pulled up Apex's business registration. The listed owner? Thomas Wilcox. One social media search confirmed it, Brian's brother-in-law. They were funneling money out of the company using inflated invoices on legitimate expenses. A shell game hidden in plain sight. I leaned back in my chair, feeling something shift inside me. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something colder, sharper, more deliberate. For 17 years, I'd been the go-to guy, solving problems, securing data, keeping systems running. The dependable one, always steady, never causing trouble. And just like that, they tossed me aside like an obsolete piece of tech. My phone buzzed. Text from Steven, a junior analyst I'd mentored for 2 years. "Sorry about yesterday. Total BS what they did. Phillips is already moving into your old office." I set the phone down without replying. Everything made sense now. Daniel and the CFO needed me out of the picture, quietly, before anyone could start connecting dots. They likely assumed the evidence would vanish along with me. Figured I was just an older IT guy who didn't get how modern corporate finance worked. I opened my email and started drafting a message to the board of directors, then paused, finger hovering over send. Too direct. Too easy to write off as the sour grapes of a recently terminated employee. I needed something stronger. Leverage. Accuracy. A way to uncover the fraud that couldn't be ignored or swept under the rug. I deleted the draft. Started mapping out a plan. Wednesday. Board meeting day. Quarterly reports, financial presentations, bonus approvals. Perfect. I closed the laptop and moved to the living room window, gazing out at the quiet street where we'd raise our kids and build our life. And for the first time since it all came down, I smiled. The next morning, I parked across the street from Meridian headquarters. I sat in the car, watching as employees trickled through the revolving doors. In the passenger seat sat my laptop, already logged into an old email account I'd once set up for internal security testing. It looked like a company email address, but wasn't tied to the official directory. Invisible. At exactly 9:15 a.m., I made my move. An email to Daniel with the subject line, "Financial irregularities, urgent review needed." Inside, I laid out a basic summary of what I discovered about the Apex payments. Just enough detail to make it real. But I left out the link to his brother-in-law. That was the bait. If Daniel wasn't on it, he'd panic. If he wasn't, he'd start digging. Either way, I'd find out. Either way, I was going to learn something. At 9:45, my phone rang Daniel's number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short and sharp. "Jake, we need to talk about your email right away. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I headed to a coffee shop, opened my laptop, and waited. By 10:30, a new email popped up. This one was from Vanessa in HR. "Mr. Wilson, we've received communication from you that may be in violation of your separation agreement. Please refrain from contacting Meridian employees further and be reminded of your confidentiality obligations. Continued communication may lead to legal consequences." So that was their angle: intimidate, discredit, isolate. One problem: I never signed a separation agreement. Around noon, I went to the bank and accessed my safe deposit box. Inside was another backup drive, older, but with key data I hadn't stored elsewhere. It included original security protocols I had designed, with detailed records of who had access to which systems and when changes were made. According to those logs, Brian Wilcox had directly requested expanded permissions to the financial approval system about 18 months ago, right around the time those Apex payments started. When I got back home, I saw 3 more missed calls: Daniel, Vanessa, and now Jason Phillips. I hadn't expected Jason to jump in so soon. That caught my attention. Checking my personal email, I found a message from Steven marked urgent. "Jake, they're saying you sent some wild email accusing people of fraud. Phillips just called an emergency meeting. The whole place is buzzing. They're locking down all your old access, even stuff we need to keep things running. What's happening?" Poor guy. He had no idea what he was caught in the middle of. I typed a short reply. "Don't get involved, Steven. Just observe." Then, at 3 p.m., my landline rang, a number I hadn't used for work in years. I answered but said nothing. "Jake, it's Brian Wilcox." His voice was calm. Too calm. "We should talk about your concerns." "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Brian said. "Is that what you're calling it?" I asked. "Look, transition periods are never easy. If you have concerns about company finances, there are proper channels." "You mean the board?" I cut in. Silence. "The board doesn't need to be bothered with operational matters. Why don't we meet tomorrow? Just the 2 of us. I'm sure we can clear this up." "Sorry, I'm busy tomorrow," I said. "Besides, I think the board would be very interested in Apex Solutions Group and your brother-in-law." The sharp breath he drew told me everything I needed to know. "You're making a serious mistake," he finally said. "We can work this out. Generous severance. References. Whatever you need." "Goodbye, Brian," I said and hung up. Within 10 minutes, Vanessa emailed again. My severance package had suddenly doubled, along with a new agreement requiring complete confidentiality about anything related to the company. They were scrambling now, still thinking I was just trying to squeeze a better deal. They had no idea what was really coming. Thursday morning brought everything into focus. I'd spent the night going over years of records, connecting details I hadn't noticed before. Turns out the Apex scheme wasn't Brian's first foray into creative accounting. 3 years earlier, right after he became CFO, another suspicious pattern emerged: consulting payments to a firm called Lakeside Business Solutions. Different name, same game, overbilled invoices for work that was never fully delivered. I checked the registration info. This time, the company was under Patricia Wilcox, Brian's wife. She was listed as CEO of a company with no website, no staff, and a virtual address. But the biggest discovery came from email archives. Daniel hadn't just known about the whole thing. He'd helped make it happen. In return, his department got extra budget while others were slashed. He'd been brought in after the previous IT director started asking too many questions about spending. Even Jason Phillips was part of it. His consulting firm had been brought in through a backdoor process that avoided standard procurement protocols. His actual job wasn't to modernize IT. It was to get rid of the one person who could follow the money trail. Me. The scheme was simple but clever. Create vendors that look legitimate, approve inflated payments, and pocket the excess. Because actual services were being delivered, just at padded rates, auditors scanning for outright fraud wouldn't catch it. Over the span of 3 years, they'd siphoned off nearly $4.3 million. I compiled everything into a full report. Spreadsheets outlining the incremental payment increases. Business registrations tying the companies to Brian's family. Emails showing Daniel was fully aware and complicit. Then I did something they wouldn't expect. I reached out to Robert Chun, a board member I'd worked with years ago during a security system rollout. He was semi-retired now, but still sat in on the quarterly meetings. Jake Wilson, he said when he picked up on the second ring. Been a while. Heard you left Meridian. Not voluntarily. I replied, Robert, I need 15 minutes of your time. It's important. A pause. This about why Brian and Daniel look so rattled? Board meeting was tense yesterday. Probably. I said. He chuckled. Always figured you knew where the bodies were buried. Where can we meet? An hour later, we were sitting in a park a few miles from headquarters. I handed him a sealed envelope containing a printed summary and a flash drive. It's all in there, I said. Dates, figures, connections. I'm not asking for my job back. I'm not looking for money. I just want the right people to see the truth. Robert studied me for a moment. Why bring this to me? Because you're one of the few people who actually reads audit reports. I've seen you in meetings. You ask the right questions. He gave a slow nod. There's an emergency board session tomorrow. Finance committee stuff. Timing couldn't be better. He slipped the envelope into his pocket. If this is real, Jake, heads will roll. I'm counting on it. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a message from Andrea. Some guy named Jason Phillips came by the house asking for you. Said it was urgent. I told him you weren't home. They were getting nervous. Good. That afternoon, I received job offers from 2 rival firms, both offering senior-level positions, both with hefty signing bonuses. Word had gotten out about my sudden availability. I let them sit. This wasn't about jumping into something new. It was about finishing what they had started. That night, using credentials that should have been revoked, but weren't, thanks to a sloppy IT transition, I accessed the company's email server one last time. I scheduled a message to go out to every board member at 8 a.m. The next day, before you approve Q2 bonuses. Read this. Attached was my full report. Friday morning arrived, clear and bright. I sat on the porch with coffee, watching the neighborhood come to life. No alarm clock, no commute, just waiting. At exactly 8 a.m., my scheduled email went out. By 8:17, my phone started ringing with numbers I didn't recognize, likely board members' assistants trying to reach me. I let them all go to voicemail. The emergency finance committee meeting would begin at 9 a.m. Robertson would be there with my documentation in hand, watching the reactions when my email was discovered and discussed. At 9:32, Stephen texted, "Police are here. Wilcox and Daniel being questioned in conference rooms." Phillips looked sick. "What did you do?" I didn't respond. Everything was going as planned. By 10 a.m., Meridian's general counsel called. This time, I answered. "Mr. Wilson, this is Patricia Graves from Legal. We need you to come in immediately to discuss the information you provided to the board." "I'm available by phone," I replied. She insisted. "This really requires an in-person discussion." I calmly interrupted. "No, it doesn't. Everything I know is in that report. It's all backed up in secure locations. If anything happens to me or my family, additional copies will go to the SEC, IRS, and 3 news outlets." There was a pause. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her tone measured, "the board is taking this extremely seriously. They'd already placed several executives on administrative leave pending investigation. They'd appreciate your cooperation. I've cooperated fully by providing complete documentation. I replied, my part is done. After hanging up, I drove to a diner 20 miles outside of Columbus. No sense in being easily found today. Over lunch, news started breaking on local business sites. Meridian Technologies executives under investigation for financial irregularities. No names yet, but that would come soon. At 2 p.m., Robertson called. It's a bloodbath, he said without preamble. Brian confessed once we confronted him with your evidence. He's trying to cut a deal, blaming Daniel for pressuring him. Daniel's denying everything. And Phillips, I asked, claims he was just a consultant with no knowledge of financial matters. The board isn't buying it. We've suspended all three pending further investigation. The money? Forensic accountants will be in Monday. Early estimates suggest at least $4.5 million diverted over 3 years. Maybe more. I nodded to myself. I'd been close. The board wants to talk to you, Robert continued, about coming back, not just to your old position. They're creating a new chief security officer role, reporting directly to the board. I was surprised, even though I'd anticipated it. I'll think about it, I said. That evening, I told Andrea everything. She listened and asked, what do you want to do? Good question. The revenge part was complete. The people who pushed me out were now being pushed out themselves, likely facing criminal charges. Justice had been served, cold and precise. But returning to Meridian meant walking back into the place that had discarded me after 17 years of service. Could I do that? Did I want to? I need time to decide. I finally said. Later that night, I opened my laptop one last time and posted a simple message to my dormant LinkedIn profile. Never burn bridges. Just let them collapse under the weight of their own greed. Within minutes, former colleagues started reaching out. Word was spreading. The quiet systems guy had brought down 3 executives without raising his voice. By Monday, everyone would know exactly who they'd underestimated. Monday morning, I walked into Meridian's headquarters wearing a suit I hadn't needed in years. The security guard did a double take, then quickly printed me a visitor badge. Welcome back, Mr. Wilson, the security guard said, his tone now filled with respect. The elevator ride to the executive floor was quiet. I'd never had reason to visit this level before. Now, I was headed to the boardroom. 10 board members sat around a polished table. Robertson gave me a slight nod as I entered. The interim CEO, formerly the COO, seemed uncomfortable. Mr. Wilson, thank you for coming, she began. The situation you brought to light is unprecedented. I stayed silent. The full extent of the fraud is worse than initially reported, she continued. The forensic team has identified nearly $5.2 million in diverted funds. Criminal charges are being prepared. I waited, still silent. Robert cleared his throat. Jake, the board has unanimously voted to create a new executive position. Chief Information Security Officer. Full executive privileges. Reporting directly to the board. We'd like to offer you the role. I set my folder on the table. Inside, you'll find my conditions, I said. Non-negotiable. The CEO opened it and scanned the contents quickly. Her eyebrows rose. Full audit authority across all departments, independent budget, veto power on financial technology decisions. I nodded once. This is unusual, she said. So, was embezzling $5.2 million. I replied, that happened because no one was watching. Now, someone will be. The room fell silent. You have until noon, I said as I stood. I have other offers. As I turned to leave, Robert asked, did you plan this all along, Jake? I paused at the door. I didn't plan to be fired after 17 years. Everything after that was just me doing what I've always done, identifying system vulnerabilities and implementing security measures. At 11:47 a.m., they called. They'd accepted every condition. 6 months later, I sat in my new corner office, reviewing security protocols for the upcoming quarter. The view overlooked the Columbus skyline, A reminder of how much had changed. Brian Wilcox had pled guilty to multiple fraud charges. In exchange for his cooperation, he'd receive a reduced sentence, though still significant. Daniel was fighting the charges, insisting he was unaware of the scheme despite the evidence. Jason Phillips had fled to Brazil, but was being extradited. The money had been recovered. Most of it, anyway, enough that the company avoided serious financial damage. My former team now reported to me, though I promoted Stephen to run day-to-day operations. The kid had potential. Just needed someone to see it. A knock at my door drew my attention. Andrea stood there, smiling. "Ready for lunch?" she asked. I nodded while grabbing my jacket. As we walked through the IT department, conversations were quiet. Not from fear, but respect. These people knew what had happened. Knew I could have destroyed the company instead of saving it. In the elevator, Andrea squeezed my hand. Happy? I considered the question. The anger that had driven me those first few days after being fired had faded. What remained was exactly happiness. More like satisfaction. Completion. "I'm good," I said. Outside, the October sun warmed our faces as we walked to a nearby restaurant. My phone buzzed with a message from Robert Chun. "Board approved your security budget increase." Unanimous vote. I smiled slightly. No arguments. No questions. Just trust. Andrea noticed my expression. "What is it?" "Nothing," I said, sliding the phone back into my pocket. Just thinking about bridges. Some collapse under their own weight. Others, once repaired, become stronger than they ever were before. I'd built this one right this time.